on them, please ignore them. Take them for free or make a donation, whatever you want. All right, so now I have the privilege of introducing our speaker for today, our River Kids director, Amelia. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Good morning. So, my name is Amelia. As Allison introduced, I am the River Kids or Children's Program Director here at the River. Welcome. I'm glad that you are here today. So let me begin by telling a story. One day, I found myself playing a game of chess with someone. We were taking turns making moves on the chessboard. At some point, my playmate stopped playing. I waited for a bit, but he was not making any move. So I asked, "What's the problem? Could you not find a way to progress the game?" But he did not answer. So I asked again if he wanted me to make a move for him. And he nodded, so I moved his piece. And then I moved my piece. And then I looked at him again to see if he was going to make the next move. But he looked so resigned. So, again, with his permission, I took his chess piece and moved it for him. And this happened a couple more times. The game progressed, but it was no longer a game. At first, I did not want to give up because I'm not a quitter. But it began to feel strange. The game had turned into something else, something that we both no longer enjoyed. So I decided that I was finished, and I quit the game. That story I just shared was actually a dream that I had one night. A pretty ordinary dream, right? But why was a dream about a boring chess game so memorable? Here's what was going on for me at the time. I had to make a big decision and was wrestling with a lot of doubt about it. So I kept tossing and turning for hours. I asked God, "Am I doing the right thing? Will this please you? Or will you be mad at me? Will I see you on the other side?" I could not find the assurance that my heart needed. Worry, anxiety, fear, even a dose of sadness overcame me. You know, sometimes I wish God had a formula for us that we could follow to help us make the right decision every time. But there isn't one. What I did receive was that dream. And the dream revealed two things to me. First, it showed me that I had tried my best. That as much as I wanted to keep playing, the game had changed. And that I could find peace about having seen it through. Secondly, although there was no specific guidance, I felt empowered to make a decision that felt true and good for me. I sensed that God was not on one side of the chessboard or of a specific option. God was with me. So whether I continued with the game or decided to quit, God would stay with me. As Pastor Allison introduced last week, we are currently in a sermon series called Living with Intention. We are looking at some of the ways that faith may help us navigate our cultural currents or the waters that we swim in. We live in a culture where the belief that grit and perseverance lead to success and happiness is deeply ingrained. And this idea has been reinforced through literature, media, and popular culture. So we hear saying things like these bumper stickers. Winners never quit. Quitters never win. Don't quit, just do it. And we may believe things like a successful marriage is one we stay until we die. A successful career is one that perpetually builds on itself, where we climb higher and make more money until we retire. Our society has a strong belief in meritocracy, the idea that people should be rewarded based on their abilities and effort. The capitalist economy further emphasizes individual effort, competition, and entrepreneurship. Angela Duckworth, the author of the book Grit, wrote, "Grit depends on a different kind of hope. It rests on the expectation that our own efforts can improve our future." The hope that greedy people have has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with getting up again. Angela's book has been sold over 3 million copies worldwide and has been translated into 30 languages. It received positive reviews and was on the New York Times bestseller list for many weeks. TED Talks and self-help books, such as Grit, are widely popular because people inherently want to achieve their goals and improve their lives. And knowing that their success depends on their efforts alone, or mainly, can be empowering. And success stories are inspiring. The history of the United States is marked by stories of immigrants and pioneers who achieved success through grit and perseverance. Even our faith is imbued with this idea of keeping with it and not quitting. Noah kept building that ark. Nehemiah committed to rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. These are just some examples how heroes have persevered despite challenges. Many of us probably can relate to those greedy people. It makes us feel good to know that we have all the abilities and power to move up and move forward in the world. And that if we stick with it, all will be good. There's a story in the Bible about a prophet with great faith, courage, and perseverance. Prophet Elijah emerged in the northern kingdom of Israel during the reign of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, who were known to be cruel and perverse rulers. They swayed the people into worshiping Baal, the Canaanite god, causing conflicts within Israel and a decline in moral values. There was a constant threat of persecution, and people had turned away from Yahweh, the God of Israel. But Elijah persisted in his beliefs and effort. In a dramatic showdown, Elijah challenged King Ahab and his prophets of Baal to a public contest on Mount Carmel. 2 bulls were prepared. The prophets of Baal were to call upon their God to consume a sacrifice with fire. And Elijah would do the same for Yahweh. It was a test to see which God was truly powerful. The prophets of Baal chanted and danced around the altar all day, calling upon their God to send fire. However, no fire came, which led to mockings by Elijah. "Shout louder. Perhaps God is busy or traveling. Maybe your God is sleeping and must be awakened. Quite a character, right? And the taunting did not seem to stop there. Elijah also doused his offering and the surrounding area with water, seemingly making it even harder for fire to ignite. Then he called upon Yahweh, and a fire miraculously descended from heaven, consuming the sacrifice, the water, even the stones of the altar. And when the people of Israel saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, Yahweh, He is God. The Lord, He is God." Elijah won the battle victoriously, and he successfully swayed public opinion back towards Yahweh. Shortly after, a heavy rain broke the 3-year drought, further proving Yahweh's power and boosting Elijah's credibility as a prophet. What a glorious success story. An inspiring story about unwavering beliefs and effort. Now you would think that Elijah would be happy, right? Maybe he would be even more emboldened to do even greater things for his God and his people. After all, this was a prophet's job. This was his mission. However, something curious happened after his triumph. Elijah received a death threat from the queen, and this prompted our courageous prophet to run into wilderness. Elijah came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, at the mountain of God. And there he went into a cave and spent the night. I am pleased that this part of the story was included in the Bible, because stories about quitting are not very popular. There are not many stories that come to mind about glorious quitting. Quitting goes against our cultural currents. Walking away from something that we once desperately wanted and worked hard to achieve, but somehow does not feel right anymore, can feel foolish, confusing, even terrifying. Annie Duke, the author of Quit, wrote, "In a large part, we are what we do, and our identity is closely connected with whatever we're focused on, including our careers, relationships, projects, and hobbies. When we quit any of those things, we have to deal with the prospect of quitting part of our identity. And that is painful." Elijah might be portrayed as a heroic character in the Bible, but he could not escape human emotions. It was clear that he was going through a painful period, so painful he would rather die. Maybe Elijah was so invested in his mission that he was expecting the king and queen to convert too. Instead, he was getting a death threat. And this could have been very disappointing. More disappointing than the death itself. I mean, if a miracle, a fire from heaven could not convince them, then what else can I do? Can I even call myself a prophet? I'm no better than my ancestor. I'm not convinced that Elijah fled out of fear for his life. Elijah was grieving the death of his strongly held identity. Like Elijah, I too had been in a place where all I wanted to do was to hide under the blanket and curl. One of the lowest points in my life was when I began to sense that my marriage was reaching to its end, and it was painful because I was grieving for so much. If I was not somebody's life partner, then what is my significance? Could we even still call ourselves a family? How would this impact my children in their senses of self? Could my children grow up healthy, confident, and happy? I was confused and terrified. But this is exactly where the most wonderful part of the story came in, both for Elijah and for me. And that is how God responded to our quitting. God did not scold Elijah. God did not guilt him or shame him. God did not say, "Look, son, after all the miraculous work we did together, you really want to quit now? Do you not trust me?" God did none of those. God fed Elijah, and God stayed with him. God showed me that the choice was mine. God was just going to be with me, no matter what. And if God was with me, then nothing was ever truly lost. And that there was nothing that God could not redeem. What God could and would do for me and my children had nothing to do with this decision at all. And had everything to do with who God is. So whatever your struggle is, and whatever it is that you're considering in your life today, this week, or this month, please know that quitting will not offend God. Our humanity does not offend God. You see, life can be messy and full of paradoxes. Sometimes we get sick or depressed or become estranged from those we love, or we get hit by a fire or an accident, or the country that we live in is at war or in crisis. I mean, much of what happens in this world is beyond one's control. So, when we glorify grit and perseverance, we may perpetuate a misguided belief that effort is all we need, that our lives solely rests on the expectation that our efforts can improve our future. And this view is just way too limited. Elijah thought it was all dependent on him too. He was the sole prophet who had to convert Israel. So when things did not happen quite as expected, he fell into despair. He forgot that it was always Elijah and God from the very beginning. In fact, I was fascinated to discover that God was always bringing Elijah food, simple sustenance. The word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Cunard ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed the widow there to supply you with food. Food was like their love language, and mine too. When Elijah quit on being the prophet, quit on living, God stayed around and fed him. It's almost like God was saying, I'm still here, Elijah. Please eat. Don't get me wrong, grit and perseverance are essential. They help us overcome challenges, develop mastery, and achieve long-term goals. However, we can cause ourselves and others harm if we use them in every situation. To create a life that is truly meaningful, soulful, and joyful, we must also embrace quitting as an option. To create a world that is more just, kind, and generous, we must see quitting in a different light, not automatically equating it with failure, so that its potential may emerge. Quitting can be a way of knowing more about ourselves and our limits. It frees up space and energy to pursue something more aligned with our values, bringing more fulfillment and growth. Quitting can give us a break so that we can prioritize our health and happiness. A stressful job or a toxic relationship can be detrimental to our well-being. Quitting can be an exercise in being, letting go of the need to perform, and living in solidarity with each other and with the life cycle. We may learn that the world is not going to collapse just because we quit. God was very much an active partner to Elijah, and I trust that God is very much involved with us too. Grit or quit? That is the question. Knowing when to quit is a challenge. There's not one formula for everyone and for every situation. But there are books like Quit that can provide practical strategies to navigate this important decision. For example, understand the costs of quitting versus sticking. Seek objective feedback. Set clear and specific exit criteria. And be flexible and adaptable. And for those of us on the outside part of this decision, we can try to be supportive. Whether our friends try to stick it out or throw in the towel. They still need our friendship on the other side of their decision. I believe that God gives us authority and freedom to make choices in life. There are times you may sense a specific direction, but most of the time, God simply makes God's self known to us. Could be in a form of a dream, or in Elijah's case, an unfamiliar yet intimate voice that sounds like trust, surrender, and love. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not found in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Elijah liked to do things boldly. Mountaintop, big gatherings, a showdown, fire coming down from heaven. So I found it interesting that to get Elijah's attention, to get him out of his cave, God came in the most gentle way possible. A whisper. One that Elijah slowly but surely learned to hear. As he let go of his expectation, maybe release his need for grand displays from God, it was in the quiet moments of reflection and introspection that Elijah found a deep sense of knowing. So, throughout this sermon series, we want to create a space for you to reflect and practice some of the things that we have been talking about. So, for those of you in this room, you will receive a printed sheet of paper with reflection questions. And for those of you at home, the reflection question will be projected on the screen. But before we do that, let us close with a prayer. Dear God, grant us wisdom to navigate the waters that we swim in. Give us the strength to persevere through challenges when it is right, and the courage to know when to step away. Help us discern the times to push forward with determination and the times to release with grace. May we find the balance between grit and quit. Be with us and fill us with your peace. Amen.
we're going to continue in a spirit of